This happened halfway through my spring break, and even now, years later, it's something I still think about whenever I play video games late at night. Spring break meant no school, no responsibilities, and for me and my best friend Joe, that meant one thing: staying up all night gaming. We did it almost every night when school was out. Call of Duty, FIFA, whatever kept us distracted until sunrise. That night felt perfect. Both my parents and Joe's parents were out at a fancy restaurant together. It was planned weeks in advance, and we already knew they'd be gone late. No one's checking in. No one's telling us to get off the console, just us and the PS4. At exactly 8 p.m., I texted Joe asking if he wanted to hop on. He replied instantly, "Yeah, let's run it." By 8:10, we were already deep into matches, trash talking, laughing, and completely relaxed. Everything felt normal, until 8:49 p.m. That's the timestamp burned into my brain. In the middle of a match, I heard something through Joe's headset. At first I thought it was an interference, static, maybe his mic rubbing against his shirt. But then I realized it sounded like whispering. Low, faint, like someone speaking just out of range of the microphone. I paused for a second and asked him, "Yo, what was that?" There was a brief silence. Then Joe replied, genuinely confused, "What are you talking about?" I just laughed it off, told him it was probably nothing. Maybe my headset glitching, but my stomach felt tight. We kept playing. 5 minutes later, Joe's voice cut through the game, but this time it wasn't relaxed. It was panicked. "Dude, the lights," he said. "They won't stop flickering." I froze. Before I could respond, his mic went completely silent, muted. I called his name. "Joe, you good?" Nothing. I unmuted and muted my own mic, thinking maybe it was a connection issue. Still nothing. His character just stood there in the game, unmoving. My heart started racing. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. At that point, fear fully set in. I called my parents and told them everything: the whispering, the flickering lights, the sudden silence. They didn't brush it off. They didn't hesitate. They told Joe's parents immediately. They all left the restaurant and rushed home. I sat there alone in my room, staring at the paused game screen, feeling completely helpless. I didn't sleep. I just waited. Later that night, Joe finally called me back. His voice sounded different, shaky, quiet. He told me what really happened. After the lights in his room started flickering uncontrollably, he heard a loud banging sound coming from downstairs. Heavy, repetitive, like something being slammed against a wall. He left his room to check it out, but he didn't realize his microphone was still on. He searched the entire downstairs, kitchen, living room, front door. Nothing was out of place. No broken locks, no open windows. Then, while standing in the middle of the house, he heard it again, this time from upstairs. From his room. He sprinted back up the stairs, his heart pounding, already knowing something was wrong. When he reached his room, his lights were no longer flickering. Everything was quiet. But his controller was sitting on the bed, and the microphone was completely unplugged. Joe swore on everything that he did not unplug it. His parents searched the house when they got home. Every room, every closet, nothing. No sign of anyone breaking in, no explanation. Nothing like that ever happened to him again. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but I know what I heard through the headset. And to this day, Joe swears he never muted his mic. Spring break was supposed to be a break. A week off from school, no alarms, no homework, no stress. But instead of partying or going anywhere, I decided to pick up extra shifts at my part-time job. I wanted the money more than the memories. I worked at a small grocery store, a few minutes from my house. Nothing fancy, just essentials. Milk, bread, canned food. The kind of place people only go when they don't feel like driving far. It was in a quiet, safe town where nothing ever really happened. That's why what happened still messes with me. That night I was working the closing shift. I was scheduled to be out by 9:30 p.m. The first few hours dragged by painfully slow. The kind of shift where you stare at the clock every 5 minutes, convinced it's broken. Around dinner time we got a sudden rush. About 30 minutes of non-stop customers. Families, older couples, people grabbing last-minute stuff. And that's when I noticed him. He walked in alone. He was older, maybe late 40s or 50s. His clothes were dirty, like they hadn't been washed in a long time. His jacket looked too big for him, hanging off his shoulders. What stood out the most, though, was his face. He was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Not the kind you give a cashier to be polite. It was stiff, forced. Like his mouth knew it was supposed to smile, but the rest of his face didn't get the message. I remember scanning his items while he stood way too close to the counter, not saying a word. Just staring at me, eyes unblinking, smile never changing. I rang him up, told him the total, and he paid without breaking eye contact. When he finally turned and walked out, I felt this weird sense of relief, like the air had shifted back to normal. I told myself I was overthinking it. By 9:13 p.m., the store was empty. That late, the building feels different. The hum of the freezers gets loud. Every sound echoes. Even your own footsteps don't sound right. I started my closing procedures, locking one entrance, shutting down registers, double-checking the security system. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. As I was counting the tills behind the counter, I heard a sound. It was faint at first, a slow dragging shuffle. I froze. The store was supposed to be empty. I had watched the last customer leave. I had locked the doors. I stood there holding a stack of bills, listening. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't the freezers. It wasn't the building settling. It sounded like footsteps. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself it had to be an animal, maybe a rat or a mouse in the storage room. That was the only explanation that made sense. Still, my hands were shaking as I grabbed a flashlight and walked towards the back. The storage room door was slightly open. I pushed it wider, the light cutting through the darkness, and that's when I saw him. Crouched behind a stack of boxes, the same man from earlier. He slowly lifted his head, locking eyes with me, and he was smiling. The exact same smile. For half a second, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Then instinct kicked in. I screamed and ran. I sprinted to my office, slammed the door shut, and locked it as fast as I could. My hands were slipping, my heart racing so fast I thought I might pass out. Almost immediately, there was a knock on the door. I backed into the corner and called the police, whispering into the phone like he could somehow hear me through the walls. While I was on the call, the knocking changed. It wasn't polite anymore. It turned into pounding. The door rattled with every hit. I could hear him breathing on the other side, hear him shifting his weight. At one point he started laughing under his breath, this slow, quiet sound that still haunts me. Then suddenly, it stopped. Silence. Seconds passed, then I heard footsteps moving away. A moment later, the front door handle started rattling violently. He was trying to leave, but the sensor system had already locked the doors for the night. He was trapped. When the police finally arrived, minutes later, they found him still inside the store. He didn't resist. He just stood there smiling. What terrifies me the most is wondering how the guy managed to walk back in the store unnoticed. I could have sworn I scanned his items, then he paid and left the store. Spring break ended after that, and I never worked another closing shift again. It was the very first night of spring break, a Friday, and everyone was desperate to start off the week right. My friend Ryan was hosting a party at his house. Not a massive one, just something chill to bring people together. He was strict about it too. No extras, no random plus ones, and a hard limit of 50 people. He even had a list and told everyone ahead of time that if they showed up with someone uninvited, both of them were getting turned away. Ryan didn't want problems. The setup was clean, speakers lining the backyard fence, music loud but controlled, and a pool glowing blue under the lights. Early on, it actually felt safe. Familiar faces, people laughing, nothing sketchy. But that didn't last. As the night went on, more people started showing up. At first it was easy to ignore, someone bringing just one friend, then another. Nobody wanted to be the bad guy. Ryan was busy hosting, refilling coolers, trying to keep things calm. By the time I realized how bad it had gotten, the backyard was packed. There had to be close to 200 people. Most were college kids, drunk and careless, but one person stood out immediately. He was older, way older than everyone else there, late 30s at least. Short hair and a tired look on his face. He stood near the edge of the crowd, partially hidden by shadows. He wasn't drinking, wasn't talking, wasn't even pretending to enjoy himself. He was just watching. I remember locking eyes with him. He didn't look away. A few minutes later, I decided to tell Ryan. I started waving through the crowd towards him when everything cut out at once. The music stopped. The pool lights shut off. Instant darkness. People yelled. Someone cursed loudly. Phones came out, lighting faces from below. The mood flipped instantly, from fun to irritated to uneasy. A few people started leaving immediately. I found Ryan and asked him what happened. He looked genuinely confused. We walked over to the side of the house where the fuse box was. The cover was smashed, plastic cracked, wires exposed. This wasn't an overload. Someone did this on purpose. That's when I told Ryan about the guy. His expression changed. He looked around the backyard, now half empty as people filled out, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Within 15 minutes, most of the party was gone. Anyone lingering got kicked out. The house felt hollow again, too quiet for how loud it had been just moments earlier. We started cleaning up, collecting cups, turning on lights, trying to convince ourselves it was over. That's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak upstairs. I told Ryan, assuming maybe someone hadn't realized the party was over. He sighed, irritated, and followed me. As we climbed the stairs, my chest felt tight, like the air was heavier up here. Every light upstairs was on. Hallway, bathroom, guest room, every light except one. Ryan's bedroom. The door was cracked open. The hallway was silent. No music, no voices, just a faint hum of electricity. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. When I leaned towards the doorway, my eyes took a moment to adjust to the darkness inside. That's when I saw movement. Something shifted under the bed. I leaned forward just enough to see a face, eyes wide, unblinking, staring straight at me. I felt like my heart stopped. The person didn't move, didn't blink, just stayed there half hidden beneath the bed frame, like they were waiting for something. I didn't scream, I didn't react. I stepped back slowly and acted like I hadn't seen a thing. I turned around calmly, walked back down the hallway, and kept my breathing steady. When I reached Ryan, I leaned close and whispered that we needed to leave right now. He asked why. I didn't answer. I grabbed his arm and pulled him down the stairs. Outside, I finally told him everything. As I was explaining, I glanced up at the house, towards the upstairs window. That's when I saw him, standing in the dark, watching us. It was the same man from earlier, same face, same eyes. The police arrived quickly. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet, under the beds. They found nothing. No one upstairs. But I know what I saw. Someone stayed after the party ended. It was him. He smashed the fuse box. And who knows what he was planning to do later that night.